Bonjour and welcome to Tarmac. I'm Dave.
I'm Matthew, or rather, should we say, ciao tutto, e benvenuto Tarmac Life, because behind us we have La Prima Fiat 500e.
And lots of tutus. Anyway, the iconic 500 is basically now bigger, smarter, cleverer, and actually comes with an electric heart. Come, let's take a look at this. So the Cinque Quinto, or 500, actually I'll probably leave the Italian to Matthew, he's obviously evidently better at it than I am, has been a mainstay of the Fiat brand since back into the 60s. And actually it's grown in size, and this one has now grown in size bigger and better, and I'll get to the dimensions in a moment, but I'm still bigger than it, actually both width-wise and actually height, so I'm quite pleased about that. The actual 500 is actually ceasing production, and it's going into just having an electric heart, so you're going to see less of the 500s and more of the 500Es. Looking around it, it's now a lot more sort of overly shaped, while certainly a lot more aerodynamic. The headlights here are LEDs. You've got a lovely sort of 500 badge across here that gives it, obviously, because there's no need for a grille anymore, and this, we believe, is pretty much where all the technical gadgets and wizardry is. And this is actually I think goes to autonomous level driving 2 or something along those lines. A little bit of airflow down here, which I assume is going to get down to the battery, and around the side here, just here, is where the indicators are. So very smart looking front. Now, New Zealand, we're bringing in two specs. We've got the Pop and the Icon. This is the Icon, so the better, or the top of the line as far as we've got. And with it comes plenty of these sort of silver bits of trim, or chrome bits of trim. It comes with the sunroof. It actually comes with 17-inch feet, so a little bit bigger from there. Ours is basically coming in onyx black, which means that it does get pretty dirty quite quickly. So in weather like, actually it's actually sunny now, but weather like now where the road's actually wet, you will have to clean it quite a lot. The big thing for me are the likes of the door handles, very recessed, very, very good, but also still very clunky when it shuts. And also dimensionally, it is, like I said, a little bit bigger. So it's 3.63 meters long and 1.53 meters in height. So around the back here, we've got a roofline spoiler that actually extends out over the sort of small rear windscreen, which actually comes with a complimentary small wiper. So there you go. Fiat's written in Fiat, and the big thing here, look at the back here, you've got the indicators that come in here and the LED sort of tail lights here. Very, very cute. I actually like the fact that they've got the Fiat 500 in sort of a blue etching, and the E is actually in one of the O's, so it would actually be a Fiat 50E, which is a totally different Consenti-Centi thingy, and no exhaust, of course, as you can see. The boot space is actually the same amount of size as the petrol, so 185 litres, that when you drop the seats down is around about 500 and something, and under the bottom here is where you've got your charging cable, which means I can go to the charger. What we have here is the charging point. This goes to the battery, which is a 42 kilowatt hour or a 37.3 kilowatt usable. That, when fully charged, goes to around about 320 kilometers of range. We haven't really found that, but it's around that sort of point. And because it'll charge at, I think it's about 85 kilowatts in a DC charge, you can actually charge or fully charge the battery up to about 80% in about 35 minutes, and or you can plug in for 5 minutes and get around about 50 Ks. This in turn powers the electrical motor, which is an 87 kilowatt motor and 220 newton meters of torque, and actually this will get off the line 0 to 100 in around about 9 seconds, which is 3 whole seconds faster than a petrol version. Anyway, speaking of things that are 3 seconds faster than me, Matthew's inside and he'll show you what's going on in there.
I'm not sure what Dave was on about being faster. I certainly hope I am, but I'll give it to him that on a racetrack, he probably does the driving bit a little bit better than I do. So speaking of doing things better, with this new electric 500, Fiat have actually gone gung-ho really on the eco and sustainability sort of angle. I'll start off with the seats, because they are actually an ice beige eco-tech sort of leatherette material, and basically I don't know what the chemistry behind those are, but all I can say is Fiat is building them to be more sustainable, as with all the different trims and things that you see on the doors as well as around the seats. Even the key has a little bio emblem on it saying that it's not just regular plastic. They have actually taken these plastics from places like the ocean, for example, reuse them and put them into this car. So very forward thinking and very eco-friendly thinking from Fiat there. What I can say though is the seats are quite comfortable themselves, but the coolest part of it is that they are still embossed with that 500 logo, and this time come with a Fiat monogram, and it's the same Fiat monogram or same Fiat logo you see on the exterior of the cars. Very cool, of course, very trendy. Speaking of trends, now the classic Fiat 500 had a canvas rooftop which you could open and get some light in. This new 500e, however, doesn't have the canvas roof. Instead, it goes with a glass sunroof with a shade that comes across like so. Unfortunately, no, it does not open, so that doesn't mean that you rather cannot get that authentic Fiat 500 experience of, standing through the rooftop of the car. But speaking of things that are more authentically Fiat 500, now this car is made in that same Mirafiori plant in Turin or Torino that is the home of Fiat essentially, and you can see that sort of paid tribute to in various parts of the cars, like the door handles over here, which have a little emblem of the classic 500 as well as a symbol saying made in Torino. You also have a graphic over here which shows the Torino skyline, very famous of course, and that again pays tribute to that Fiat 500 history, specifically to Turin. Now, I might be wrong here, but at least from my perspective, the loop that goes around the dashboard there that frames it in a nice sort of grayish color, well, that in a way, parts of it remind me of that old Lingotto test track which was on the rooftop of Fiat's old building in Turin. But anyway, that could just be the Italian in me trying to look for things like that. However, speaking of the dashboard, the materials are split across various different kinds. So of course you get that glossy blackish gray plastic. You get some softer touch materials there which are of course eco-friendly, and you get some hard plastics on the top of the dash there as well as the bottom. Back to the center console. Now you do get the parking brake in the middle there. You also get the different modes, of which there's 3, but Dave will go into those on the drive. And then you get a volume and audio switch as well. There is a generous storage space down the middle there, and you also get a USB-C and USB Type-A charging port, as well as a 12-volt socket, and some further storage in the armrest underneath there. Not to forget the door bins as well, which are actually split across 2 different kinds, and I guess in a way allow for more customizable storage for your various things. The doors themselves actually have an electronic release, which is up the top there, but in the event that that doesn't work, there is also a fail-safe manual release down the bottom, so that you're not trapped in the car. In the middle here, you have a 10.25-inch Cinerama infotainment screen, and as you can see there, it's pretty neatly integrated into the dash so that it doesn't really, sit above and block the driver's view, but instead sits nicely. Now, in terms of the layout, you do have, this is the home screen mode, so you do have your maps there, as well as your audio input and your phone connectivity. The only bug I have with this is sort of how various text is overlaid and part of it is cut out. But anyway, it wouldn't be a Fiat without all those sort of quirks, would it? Speaking of the screen, you also get seat heating controls right there on the home screen, as you can see, as well as a swipe down menu that gives you access to some more information and your notifications of the car. Now, if I go back up there and then look at the menu on the left side, I do have my media sources. I can also operate the climate control from the screen here, as well as the buttons down the bottom. So quite intuitive from that sense to have 2 options. You also get your built-in navigation there. And then in terms of your phone connectivity, you have of course Bluetooth, but you also get Android Auto and Apple CarPlay, as you can see up there. So plenty of connectivity options going on. Lastly, if you click on that friendly looking Fiat 500e logo there are specific electric vehicle settings that you can toggle, which include the power flow. So it'll show you whether you're discharging or recharging the battery, how many kilowatts you're using for your climate and your driving. And then of course you can take a look at your driving history as well as your charging schedules and various other preconditioning things. So it's quite smart from that sense in what it allows you to view and control. Now, in typical Fiat 500 style, it is of course a nice big round central gauge, as you can see there, with your speed in the middle. And then instead of having revs and things, this time you have charge and power, and then of course that'll alternate based on what you're doing with the battery. The battery icon is of course on the left. You've got your charge indicator there, as well as a range indicator below that. What I want to draw your attention to is the mode at the top right there alongside the gear shifter. Now we're currently in Sherpa mode, which is the most energy conserving mode, but if I want to switch I can simply by pressing the button in the middle, and that gives me access, as you can see there, to the normal and range modes as well, which are available. Heading back out to the steering wheel, it's a nice soft touch unit. You've got a flat bottom there, as well as a large feel to give you that authentic Fiat 500 driving perspective. The buttons themselves are piano black, and you can see on the right is your adaptive cruise, whereas on the left is your phone controls, as well as the controls for changing your screen layout. So if you look at the buttons there, you can change what you see, change what the screen displays as a majority, and the positions of various things. So there is so much of customization on offer here up front. Now, enough with the upfront bits. I think it's time for me to, for your entertainment of course, try and see what space is like in the back. Now, I did have that seat back against my knees, and I've got to say that yes, it is true. My knees are firmly against the seat in front, and it is uncomfortable, especially for longer journeys. But on a shorter journey, this is tolerable, even for a taller person to sit in the back here. Obviously, there's only 2 seats behind here, but you do get some good sized windows and speakers as well to keep you occupied. Now, speaking of the long distances, this Fiat 500 has always been renowned for its characterful drive. So I think let's go and test that out.
Alright, so I'm not convinced that Matthew's last statement about the 500 being well known for its long distance driving, but I'll leave that for you to decide. However, he is right about it having a lot of personality. And let's get one thing out of this up front. This does lack a little bit of that 500 personality as far as the driving goes, not in looks, but certainly in terms of driving.
Absolutely agree. I was always a big fan of the previous 500, you know, with that tiny engine, and even in the semi-automatic dual logic gearbox, it was still fun to drive. You know, it made you laugh. You sort of look forward in a way to, you know, flinging it around corners in the city and all of that stuff. It really had I think an air of playfulness is probably the right word about it. Whereas the 500e seems a lot more business-like, and in a way, you know, more removed, if you like, from the driver in that sense.
Yeah, I wouldn't necessarily disagree with it. I mean, it is more sure-footed, if that makes sense. I mean, having the battery weight and everything, it's low center of gravity. It's still cute. It's still in its right sort of its size, but it just lacks that fight, that engine note matched with the fact that you just can't get the gearbox right. This just takes away all that. So for those that want a smoother ride and still have the good looking outside or the cuteness of the outside, this is definitely an upgrade.
100%. I will agree with Dave on that cornering note, because yes, this 500e feels a lot more confident going around corners. And even I'd say at higher speeds, you know, once you start to get onto the motorway and stuff like that, you feel a lot more comfortable sitting in one of these as opposed to the older the previous generation petrol-powered 500, let alone, of course, the old, Cinquecentos or the Bambinas, as they're called in some markets. When Fiat brought back the 500 in this new century, in the 21st century, they brought it back as a more lifestyle car, as something that's like a fashion accessory in a way, and something that, is a trendsetter, if you like. And what better way to continue that trend setting than to move it over to an electric 500, right?
I agree. Look, it had to go electric at some point, and this is, I think, is their Fiat's first foray into the electric world. And you're right, it's perfect. It's got enough range around the town, 300-ish k's. It's quick, it's nimble, it's ideally suited for an electric powertrain. The other thing is just how safe it is. This comes loaded with safety gear, and I don't think we've touched on that yet, but driver and safety aids are all over the place, from adaptive cruise, lane keep assist, to just huge camera to make sure before you had to creak your neck to look out the back. Admittedly, it's not a big car to park, but it's still, having the extra screen up there and all the gadgets is actually quite advantageous.
Absolutely. There's also modes where it'll take over and center you within the lane. There's several other different functions and features that allow it actually to be approved for up to level 2 autonomous driving. So that just tells you how much of a step up there has been in that technology and that safety side, as Dave said. And you can certainly feel it when you're in this 500. Though remarkably, I'll say, is you don't feel like the car is forcing you to do things. You don't feel like it's taking over from you. It does it in a friendly Fiat 500 sort of way, let's say that.
An Italian way.
Exactly.
There you go. The range, like I said, is questionable as far as your full range, but then most battery or BEVs are like that. The acceleration is so much better and so much smoother, and you're not nodding every time you're gear changing, so that again is a real plus. And also, driving on New Zealand's rough roads and just their open poured roads, this is really well insulated. I'm really surprised at how good it is,
despite the fact that there isn't much soft touch materials at all around here. All of the plastic surfaces are generally hard and scratchy. It does actually feel really quiet and really sort of, as Dave said, soft on some of our rougher roads, and that's in part credit to its 17-inch wheels and those pretty meaty rubber tires it's got around them, as of course the materials that the seats are made of, that eco-friendly leather, as well, help insulate you at least from the road.
The driving modes are good. Once you go from normal to range gives you that sort of one pedal driving feeling, so it actually will bring you to a stop and hold it there. And then once you move into Sherpa, that actually limits your acceleration, so you still get the one pedal driving feeling, but your range goes up even more. So if you are looking for range and a more leisurely drive, then Sherpa or something like that is the way to go.
Absolutely. And it's nice to see that Fiat have decided that even with the 3 modes, that they want to go the route of more battery conservation rather than a sporty drive and all that stuff, because of course they'll leave that to the Abarth 500e when that comes out, and it's meant to be quite a cracker of an electric car, supposedly.
Yeah, looking forward to that one. The visual or visibility all round is great. Steering is, it's really sharp. Again, slightly removed. I feel less connected to the road below than I would in an older car, but then it's a modern car. I should realize that there's been a few presidents and stuff since I drove an older Fiat 500. I like the fact that your phone is right up front here. It is chargeable as well, and honestly, I actually feel quite roomy in here. It's reasonably spacious. I'm not sitting on Matthew's lap as much as he'd like me to.
That's a big plus point as well. This 500e is not just electric. It is actually a larger car physically than the previous model, the petrol powered model. So that means that, look at that, you get about a hand's width of space in between you and your passenger, and then in the back as well, as you saw earlier, that there is some more room in there. So if you are a bit taller and you need to get in the back of one of these, you're not extremely uncomfortable.
For those long runs that they're renowned for, right? So there you have it, the new Fiat 500e. It's great around town. Actually really good in the sort of shortery, longy runs. I don't know you're going to say about long runs, but anyway, I like the battery range. I think it drives really well. Actually drives probably too well for a 500, if that makes sense. Anyway, enjoyable drive, and just lacks a little bit of that character, but then so do you.
It's been a big step up in safety firstly, and then in space as well. And I think some of the materials in here have also taken a step up in terms of the feel on your feel to touch. But again, it's just not quite as charming as an older 500 is. But maybe that's something that comes with age as well.
See, older and charming. Anyway, thanks for watching. Make sure you subscribe. It'll be around here somewhere. And was it ciao or something?
Exactly. Ciao, and we'll see you on the next one.
See ya.